I just wanted to start off by thanking you all for joining us here today, and also for thanking the University of Utah Alumni Association. It's really a pleasure to be with you today and have a chance to chat a little bit with you about what's going on at the College of Law generally before the COVID-19 pandemic, and then give you a bit of an update of some of the things so that we are dealing with moving forward as a result of the pandemic. So first off, my name is Elizabeth Kronk Warner. I have the absolute pleasure of being the Dean of the S.J. Quinney College of Law. I really believe that it is the best job in the world, and so I view it as an honor and privilege to share that role. I've been in this role now for approximately a year. It'll be a year in June. And so I'm really excited to share with you what we've accomplished in this last year and some of the challenges that we're facing moving forward. So first, for those of you who may not be familiar with S.J. Quinney College of Law, I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to who we are and to our history. Then I wanted to share with you what was our vision for the College of Law and what we've been working on for the past year. And then we can talk a little bit about how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting those efforts. And then reflect on where we've had some successes, and then focus specifically on the COVID-19 pandemic and how that is impacting us at the College of Law. So we'll look both at kind of current impacts or challenges that we have already worked through this spring semester, and then we can look ahead towards the future to see what the pandemic may mean in the short term for legal education, and then perhaps more in the long term as well. So I'll spend about 30 minutes or so chatting, and then I really want to leave plenty of time for you all to ask questions and to chat about what might be of interest to you. If you do have any questions, you can feel free to put your questions into the YouTube chat, and I should be able to see those and answer your questions. So I want to be sure to leave lots of time for questions at the end of this. All right, so first up, a little bit of history about the S.J. Quinney College of Law. So an important thing for us is we are the only public law school in Utah, and I think that's really important because that shapes our mission. Obviously, we have goals to have a strong national reputation and be recognized for the great work that we're doing, but given that we're a public institution, we really also view our responsibility to serve the state of Utah important as well. And so that dual responsibility, both to make sure that we have a strong national reputation and also be sure that we're giving back to the state, is something that's very important to us. And so when we get into our discussion of how the COVID-19 pandemic may be impacting us and how we're responding to those impacts, you'll see that part of our response is taking those dual responsibilities into consideration. We were founded in 1913. We first held classes in 2 rooms in the Salt Lake City city and county buildings. So we had kind of humble beginnings, but I'm very pleased to say that we've grown in exciting ways. Our first graduating class only had 8 individuals. We now have well over 100 individuals in every class, so we've certainly seen some growth in there. A few years after we started in 1913, we moved to the Park Building, which is now, if you've been to University of Utah's campus, is kind of in the central portion of the campus and the gemstone, if you will, where you'll see a lot of pictures of it on various advertising. So we were there for a long time. But in 1963, a new building was built on the southwest end of the campus, and that's still the location, the general location that we occupy today is on the southwest end of campus. We really like to think of ourselves as kind of the gateway to the University of Utah, because for a lot of students and people visiting the university, they come up to campus that way, or they may take tracks, and there's a big tracks station right there. So a lot of people, we're the first building they may see when they come to campus. And so that's another thing that we really take to be important and that we appreciate our location for. In 2001, we really received a transformational gift from the S.J. and Jessie E. Quinney Foundation. And this gift led to our naming as the S.J. Quinney College of Law. And more importantly, it's really a name that we are so incredibly thankful to have, because as many of you may know, S.J. Quinney and Jessie really served an important role in our community and played a very strong role in the way that Salt Lake developed into the world-class city that it is. And so we really see that as being a great name for us, because as we mentioned before, we view that the fact that we're a public institution, that we have strong responsibility both to the state, and then of course we do have national aspirations as well. So the fact that we are now the S.J. Quinney College of Law is really fantastic, and we couldn't think of anybody else that we would like to be named after. We are actually coming up on the 20th anniversary of this transformational gift. That's coming up next year. So we've started thinking about how we're going to celebrate that and really reflect upon these amazing 20 years and what that gift meant for us. So we're really excited for 2021 and celebrating that gift from the S.J. and Jessie Quinney Foundation. We moved into our new facility, which hopefully you've all had a chance to see, which is still located in the southwest end of campus, in 2015. And as we'll see when we talk a little bit about some of the successes of the law school, one of the things that stands out is that we are consistently named as having one of the best and most beautiful buildings in all of the nation in terms of our facility. So we're so incredibly thankful for this new building that we're in. And for those of you who may be on this call and may have made a contribution to the new building, we're very, very thankful for that contribution. Not only is it a beautiful building, but it's also sustainable. So it was one of the first law school buildings that was LEED Platinum certified, and we're really proud of that. Whenever people come and visit our building, we like to give them tours and show them all the unique features of the building and how we're trying to be just a little bit more sustainable. Another thing I love about our building is we have bathrooms for everyone on every level, and we also have nursing rooms on every level, which is really great because a lot of our students and members of our community have families, and so it's nice that we try to be really family friendly. So if you haven't seen our building already, we hope that you'll come visit us. It's something that we're very, very proud of, and for those of you who did contribute, thank you so much for your contributions. We're proud of the building, and it continues to be recognized nationally. So that's a little bit of our background. How have things changed in the last year? So again, I had the honor and privilege of becoming Dean of the S.J. Quinney College of Law officially on July 1st of last year. So it's been approximately a year, and it's been a really busy year. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we had a lot going on at the College of Law, and so I'll share a little bit about you. So it's been really a fantastic, great first year, and as you may know, one of the reasons why it's been so fantastic is we just have an amazing community at the College of Law, world-class faculty, phenomenal, hardworking, good students, and just a faculty or a staff, excuse me, that will just go the extra mile. And so it's really just been a wonderful first year. My vision for this year and moving forward has really focused on three elements. So first off, even before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we were really working to improve the financial viability of the law school. So we were looking closely at our budget to make sure that we were being fiscally responsible. We've also made efforts to increase our fundraising, to get out and to meet people and to talk about how the College of Law may be of service and benefit to the community. Another thing that we worked on, we noticed in reviewing the College of Law's national reputation, that a lot of what we were doing at the College of Law really wasn't getting the attention that other colleges were getting, or other colleges of law were getting for their similar work. So we've taken on a big lift this past year, and kudos to our communication teams and our external relations teams led by Kevin Carrillo. We've really done a big push this past year to get the word out about what we're doing. So we haven't necessarily changed a lot of what we've done, but we have made efforts to make sure that our peers at other institutions do have knowledge of what we're doing. And that's really important because 40% of our national ranking is actually a subjective score. So about 60% of it is objective criteria, things like bar passage, LSAT, undergraduate GPA, but 40% is the subjective criteria. And specifically, US News surveys both our academic peers, so other deans and associate deans at other law schools, and then practitioners and judges to say what they think of our graduates. And so we found that a lot of our peers just weren't aware of the great work that we were doing here at the S.J. Quinney College of Law or the state of Utah in general. And so we just want to get that word out and make sure that they know what we're up to, so that when they complete that survey, they can appropriately evaluate us and our work. So we've been doing a lot of that this last year to kind of get the message out and make sure that people are aware of that. The third goal for this past year has been to help to make the College of Law a more inclusive place and to really reflect the Salt Lake City community. So one of the things that I think is a great strength of Salt Lake and then the state of Utah as well is the fact that we have this wide range of people from various backgrounds, from different ideological perspectives. And so I view that as a real strength of our community. I've chatted with some of my colleagues who have taught at other law schools, and they've said that other law schools really seem very, very liberal or very, very conservative, to the point where my colleagues felt like they had to take the opposite perspective in class. But one of the advantages of the S.J. Quinney College of Law is that we have people who tend to be very conservative, who tend to be very liberal, and kind of everybody in between. And so that makes our classroom really wonderful in the perspective that people are bringing those different perspectives and can share those different perspectives. And so we really want to build on that and make sure that everybody in our community feels comfortable and feels valued. And so we've been taking specific steps to make sure that that is in fact the case. So how has the past year been? So prior to COVID-19, I would say that we were having a lot of success. So in terms of our goals for national reputation, I'm very pleased to say that our national ranking improved to 45. And interestingly, there's a bottleneck where several schools were ranked 42nd, and we were only 1 point away from 42nd. So we're really hopeful that with our continued efforts in this space, we might be able to make up that 1 point and hopefully continue on this upward trajectory of increasing our rankings. So for those of you who are alumni, please know we're working on increasing the value of your degree, and we've so far seen some positive results in that regard. Interestingly, the US News and World Report also has recently started doing specialty program rankings, and we saw some real successes as well there. So our environmental program, which is really the premier environmental program of the West, continues to be a top 10 ranked environmental program. So we're very proud of that. But we've also seen several of our other programs starting to climb and getting national reputation that they really deserve. So our health law program, specifically our law and biomedical sciences program, has really started to see an increase in their ranking, jumping up several points. Our criminal law program, and many of you know that we have national experts in the area of criminal law, is getting a high ranking, as is our commercial and our corporate programs, and many of our other programs as well. Those just happen to be some of our most highly ranked programs. And so of course we're hoping to build on those specialty rankings, and again, not necessarily changing what we're doing, but just getting the word out in terms of, excuse me, in terms of the great work that our faculty are doing. We've also been recognized as having one of the best law school buildings. We got an A+ on our law school building, which is fantastic because obviously that helps us to recruit other fantastic students to the community. So hopefully they can become great alumni like you. And also it's just nice for our faculty and staff to be able to work in a nice environment. So we really appreciate that recognition. We've been recognized recognized as a best value law school, which is something that we view as very important as well. And this actually goes to the next point as well. So through our fundraising efforts and some of our budgetary efforts, and again, a big thank you to all of you who have contributed and made this possible, we've been able to significantly decrease the annual debt load of our students. So to put this into context, the annual debt load for law students these days when they graduate from law school is $90,000, which is a lot of money and really decreases the flexibility that a lot of these students have when they start to think about what careers they might want to take on. We have been able to decrease our debt load to $61,000, which certainly is still a significant amount of money, but gives our students that cushion and that flexibility so that if they want to do public service or if they want to do government service, they don't have as significant of a burden and can feel more comfortable taking on that government or public service work. And so I think that that's important not only for our students, who obviously we want to assist and be able to provide a safety net for them. But I also think that that's part of our mission and our goal of helping our community, because by graduating students who have lower debt loads, our hope is that those students are going into a wide variety of legal service areas and are making important contributions to society because they have greater flexibility as a result of that decreased debt load. We've also had an increase in our fundraising. So prior to COVID-19, we were on track to see about a 20% increase in our fundraising efforts. So again, those of you who have been so incredibly generous, we very much appreciate everything that you've done. Obviously, fundraising is a little bit difficult in these times under the current conditions. But for those of you who have continued to make your donations, again, we really, really appreciate it. And the space where we have seen the biggest increase in fundraising has been in the scholarship space, which goes to the prior point of our overall efforts to try to decrease debt load for our students. And so this has been incredibly appreciated to see that increased scholarship. The fundraising for scholarship also helps us on the national reputation piece because it helps us to both attract and to keep top talent here in Utah. And so those scholarships have been really helpful in making sure that we keep the best and the brightest here in Utah. So again, a big thank you to everybody who's been able to contribute to scholarships. We've made some success in terms of our goals of inclusivity, in terms of diversifying our faculty and staff. So we have seen improvement there, and that's really helpful because those people bring a wide range of different perspectives, and especially as we have been dealing with this pandemic, and let's be honest, I don't think any of us had any experience in how to deal with a pandemic. Having a diversity of viewpoints among our faculty and staff has been really helpful because that helps us to kind of get different thoughts on how different communities might be impacted by the pandemic, and allows us, I think, to better respond to the issues as a result of the pandemic. So in general, it's been very helpful, and I think having that increased diversity has been specifically helpful in this pandemic situation that we now find ourselves in. We also have initiated inclusivity training. So having conversations both with our students and with our faculty and staff about what it means to be an inclusive environment, and how do we create and sustain an environment that allows for everybody, whether it's faculty, staff, or students, to truly feel comfortable and to share their viewpoints. Because again, it's that diversity of viewpoint that I think makes us an even better institution and potentially distinguishes us from some of our peers. So we've been working on that. We've done training with students, we've done training with faculty and staff, and we are going to continue to do that as well. A little difficult during these challenging times of the COVID-19 crisis, but we have been holding diversity, equity, and inclusion office hours so that we're available to students to meet with us. And so we're still trying to make ourselves available even online during these challenging times. So we're trying to still work on that. We've also tried to be a little bit more focused on well-being. This is not your father's law school in the sense that this is not the law school from the paper chase where it's look to your right, look to your left. Two of you aren't going to be here. Our view is that law school is hard enough without having to make it any more difficult with those types of viewpoints. So we were able, as part of our budget efforts, to hire an embedded counselor. So we have a counselor that's available to our students for half the week. So she works for us for 2.5 days. And that has been hugely successful. At one point, she had a wait list of approximately 2 months because so many students wanted to speak with her. And that's been especially helpful during this COVID-19 pandemic, when a lot of students who might not otherwise have been feeling stresses now are because of professional or personal reasons. So we're really happy that we were able to focus on wellness, have discussions about wellness, and then also take kind of the financial step of investing in a counselor that's available to our students. And I think that that's been really money well spent. We've seen also on the inclusion front, we've seen significant increased coverage of inclusion and diversity at the College of Law, which is fantastic, both to highlight the work that we're doing and I think to address this perception, a wrong perception, but a perception that Utah perhaps is not a diverse place or a place where a diversity of perspectives is welcome. And so we're really thankful for this coverage that we've been able to get. And again, that's a lot of shout out to our communications team, who's done a great job of getting the word out to national outlets so that we can share the great work that's being done both at the college, at the university, and in Salt Lake City. Prior to COVID-19, our financial efforts and our fundraising efforts, again, big thank you to everybody who contributed. We're seeing some benefits or some growth. And prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we were estimating a slight surplus, which was allowing us to start to think about other areas we might invest in and programs we might grow. The nice thing about that is that that's given us a little bit of cushion in the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can imagine, and as you know, there are financial ramifications. So even though we are not in the space we were hoping to be in, where we would be in a position to think about how we would reinvest that money into the College of Law, those efforts have been really helpful because it's provided us a little bit of a cushion here in the financial challenges that we have with the COVID-19. The other thing that we've been working really hard on is reaching out to you, our alumni, and our external stakeholders. So prior to COVID-19, we were on the road a lot. We had been all over the West meeting with our fabulous alumni. It's one of the things I love about my job is the opportunity to meet and chat with you in person. We had even gotten out to the East Coast a couple of times. Since the pandemic, obviously that's impacted our ability to meet in person, but we've also taken certain steps to make sure that we're maintaining those connections, such as webinars. Hopefully some of you have participated in the Dean's Book Review. So we're still trying to keep that outreach, but just doing it in different ways in this new and challenging times. But then COVID-19 hit. So we were definitely having some success. I think we're continuing to having some success, but how we measure that and how we address it certainly was impacted by the COVID-19 challenges. So we have experienced challenges this past spring semester, and I'll chat a little bit about those, but the challenges are not over. Just because we have completed the spring 2020 semester, we still have ongoing challenges. So this summer, all of our courses are going to be online. So thinking through how to best support those courses is certainly a challenge. And then in the fall, our goal, of course, is to be back in person. But even if we're in person, we know that there'll still have to be some online elements or changes because there are members of our community, whether it's faculty, staff, or students, who will be vulnerable to the virus. So until we're in a place where there's a vaccine, we'll probably still have some element of an online element to the College of Law. And so I don't think we're going to see a normal return until we get that vaccine. Of course, what the new normal may be is very much up in the air. But let me share with you some of the challenges that we've been working through this past spring as we deal with the impacts of the COVID-19 virus. So the first was, as you can imagine, moving the entire College of Law online, and I think about 4 days was truly a difficult task. And this is where I really have to thank our IT department. Thankfully, we have an amazing IT crew, and prior to getting the word that we were going to have to move everything online, our IT department, led by Lance Fidge, had started doing twice daily trainings with our faculty and staff on how to use Zoom and what the technology was. And so I'm so incredibly thankful for them, because I think they really helped us be able to make this transition a little bit more smoothly. But just moving online was a challenge in and of itself. We have students that are sheltering in place all over the country who needed to have access. And so we've been working with them to make sure that they have the access and the technology that they need. Marriott Library has been a great partner in this. Marriott did a great job of making sure that all students, including our students, had access to laptops. So a big thank you to Marriott Library for everything that they did. So that helped quite a bit. We also had faculty and staff that had some technology challenges. So we had one faculty member who didn't usually work from home, and he was still using at home a desktop and a landline. So getting him the technology that he needed was certainly challenging. So that week or so was a lot of long nights, but I'm really pleased to say that our community made the transition relatively smoothly. Of course, there were some people that we had to support a little bit more than others, and some assistance that we had to provide, but I was so incredibly impressed by the ability of our community to make that transition. It was especially impressive to me, given that law we are a conservative profession. We tend to move slowly and to think very deliberately. And so unlike perhaps some of the other units on campus where they had been kind of putting their toes into online learning, or perhaps were fully immersed in online learning, we were not. So there were not a lot of people in our building with experience in the online space, and yet they made it work, and they made it work with very little complaints. So I'm just so incredibly thankful to our community and everything that they did. So once we got everybody online, and I kind of feel like since the COVID-19 pandemic hit, it's been kind of one big challenge after another. So we were able to get everybody online. And then once everybody was online and kind of moving along, we quickly realized that there was a grading challenge, because how do we maintain the normal grading scale when there had been this huge upheaval? So even though most of our students were able to make the transition from a technological perspective, our students were now dealing with tremendous pressures at home. So for example, numerous stories of students who, because they lost their childcare, either because the schools closed down or the daycares closed down, were now finding themselves with 4 or 5 students, although they're students now because of homeschooling, but kids now at home, and trying to find a way of balancing their schoolwork with also now their new responsibilities of not only taking care of their children during the day, but also homeschooling, which was tremendously challenging. We had students who either they themselves lost their jobs or their spouse lost their job, which was putting tremendous pressure on them. Students whose parents lost their jobs, and so the students were going back and trying to support their parents in different locations. We've had people who've had to care for elders in their situation, and had elders that were at tremendous risk. So our students have just gone through the ringer in terms of how this has impacted them. And so the faculty really started to look at this grading policy issue. And ultimately, the faculty decided that the most humane path forward would be to require credit, no credit for all students. And the reason for that was a couple-fold. So first off, it was recognizing all of these challenges that we just chatted about. Secondly, it was recognizing that grading in law school, as you may all well know from your past experience in law school, is a zero-sum situation. So because we have mandatory curves and because we grade each other or grade students in relation to each other rather than necessarily purely pedagogical from a perspective of does this person master the material, the faculty was very concerned that it's zero sum. So if somebody got a better grade, let's say they were able for whatever reason to not have the pandemic interrupt their ability to succeed for a wide variety of reasons, that would necessarily mean that somebody else who perhaps was hard hit by the pandemic then would receive a lower grade. And so the faculty was very concerned by the zero-sum nature of law school grading. But also there was a significant element of looking and thinking about the students in terms of their career opportunities. So over 70% of law schools, and it actually might be over 80% of law schools at this time, I haven't checked the numbers recently, but at the time we made the decision, 70% of law schools had moved to mandatory credit, no credit. Notably, all of the top 30 law schools had made the move to mandatory credit, no credit. So essentially all of our peers had moved to credit, no credit. And we were very concerned that if we didn't make the grading system mandatory credit, no credit, then employers would just assume that if a student took an optional credit, no credit, that would mean that the student was not going to get a good grade in that class and that that would have negative impacts on our students. Also, as employers try to balance this, you know, this student from BYU has a credit, but this student from Utah has a B. How do I balance those two things? And so we really thought from a career planning perspective that that was in the best interest of our students. So that was a very thoughtful conversation. We engaged our students to get their feedback. The faculty thought about it at length and spent many hours discussing it, both in person, well, in person via Zoom and online. And so ultimately we moved to this mandatory credit, no credit grading policy, which is very much consistent with our peers. Next up was this issue of bar and whether or not what we were going to do with the bar, right? So this issue of how do you administer a bar examination when you're in the middle of a pandemic? Not only is there the humane piece of it, of our students are dealing with all the challenges that we already talked about, not to mention the logistical piece of it, right? Of how do you logistically have several hundred people take an exam in one space? How do you have them socially distanced? Do they have to take the exam with a mask on? And the NCBE, which supplies the questions that the states use to administer the bar exam, does not have that material online. So really our only option for a bar exam these days is an in-person one. And if you've had a chance to read the governor's plan, you know that Utah is not likely to get back to any sort of normal, again, whatever normal means in this space, until after September. So what's the likelihood of a July bar exam? If a July bar exam isn't likely, when will it be? How do our students know when to study? How do they support themselves during that uncertainty? There were just a lot of really hard issues that were coming up around the bar exam. And so I'm incredibly thankful and grateful to our Utah Supreme Court, the Utah State Bar, and then also this is a space where we worked collaboratively with our colleagues down at the J. Reuben Clark Law School at BYU. To get what we call Diploma Privilege Plus, excuse me. So you may be familiar with Diploma Privilege. The idea of Diploma Privilege is that you are able to practice law after graduating from a law school. So two states currently have some form of Diploma Privilege. There's Wisconsin, and then in New Hampshire, some individuals qualify for Diploma Privilege. So we really thought that this was a good way to go. And I acknowledge that the state of Utah is in a nice position when it comes to diploma privilege because we have 2 top 50 law schools in the state who both have very high bar passage. So we're fortunate in that we're not in a situation that other states find themselves where they may have a wide range of law schools in terms of bar passage. And so I think this issue has been a little bit more challenging for other states to deal with. So on April 21st, we got a final order from the Utah Supreme Court saying that they were going to move forward with diploma privilege with the caveat that students have to do 360 hours of legal work under the supervision of a supervising attorney. And since that decision, we've been working really closely with our career development office and with Professor Louisa Heine. Big shout out to Professor Louisa Heine, who's worked so incredibly hard on these issues, and the CDO, who's now working hard to effectuate it, to both find people who qualify as a supervising attorney under the rule and then place them with our students. So we've been spending a lot of time on that. We have a online platform that just went live yesterday to help with that matching. And so we're really incredibly hopeful that this is going to be successful. We're also hopeful that in terms of, remember, part of our mission is to give back to the state, is that a lot of our students will hopefully either do pro bono or low bono work as a result of this 360-hour requirement, because as you may be aware, and big shout out to the Utah Bar Foundation that just released a justice gap report, we do have significant access to justice gaps in the state. And so we're really hopeful that, and we've been encouraging our students to try to give back to the state, to the community, by doing pro bono and low bono work as a part of their 360 hours. So stay tuned. This is a bit of an experiment. We'll see how it goes. I'm very hopeful that our students will do us proud and will do good work and will represent us well in the profession. As you can imagine, employment has been quite a challenge. And so we've been working really closely with our career development office to try to make sure that we both maintain existing permanent jobs that have been extended, and then also do what we can to support those students, our 1Ls and our 2Ls, in terms of their summer opportunities. So what we've generally seen, and I have some more information on employment a little bit later. So in generally, we've seen that a lot of firms and legal employers are still keeping their permanent hires, but they may be reducing the hours for summer associates or converting paid positions to unpaid positions. And so what we're doing on the summer associate piece is, those of you who are alumni, you should be getting an email from us shortly saying that if you have any sort of work that our students might be able to do, it doesn't have to be paid work, to please let us know and we'll match you with a student, so that hopefully, even if it's not paid work, that our students can still have a legal opportunity over the course of the summer. Also, we are working on increasing our summer course offerings so that students who perhaps were not planning on taking summer classes but are now finding themselves in a situation where they have lost their job because of the pandemic, they can take summer classes, again with this idea of, we want to assist our students to have some sort of legal work on their resume. Other things that we've been dealing with, our building has been closed since approximately mid-March, and it will likely stay that way. We are seeing some lessening of that, just a teensy bit of lessening starting May 11th, in that some people can return if they absolutely have to, but then it should just be a short period of time. So most of us are going to continue to telework. We've certainly been dealing with financial impacts. We're currently under a hiring freeze. We have travel restrictions through June 30th. And we also have a salary freeze, so that we can't give the salary increases that some of our staff and faculty deserve, quite frankly. And so that's taken some time that we've been working on that to see how to best manage those impacts as well. Another impact and thing that we've been trying to work through is, obviously, our community has been impacted. We don't get to see each other face to face. What does that mean for our community, and how can we maintain community? So we've been doing things like, as I mentioned before, having virtual office hours for students who need to come and chat with us. I myself have been doing that on a regular basis. We've been doing fun things like trivia nights. So we hosted true trivia nights with our students, which was a lot of fun. On the staff side, we actually got together and played a really fun online game yesterday at lunch, and so that was nice just to see each other. So we've been trying to think through how we can try to maintain community. I'm really proud of, again, our development and communication staff, because they've done two things that I think are really fantastic. The first was we were able to put together some graduation care packages for our students that included toilet paper and hand sanitizer to celebrate and recognize them, since we can't do it in person. And then our own Shelby Jarman, who works in our communication office, did a great project, Front Door Portraits, where she went to students' homes and, using a long range camera lens, was able to take pictures of them from a safe distance, but could take pictures of them in their regalia so that they would have a picture of this historic moment in their regalia. So we're trying to build and maintain our community, but of course it's certainly challenging. And then our alumni and external stakeholder outreach. So we're having to pivot and think about how we maintain contact with our alumni and our external stakeholders. So hopefully you've noticed that we've done increased webinar series. So we're doing a lot of webinars on how COVID-19 has impacted various areas of the law. Also, we've started a monthly book club or book review where we read a book related to whatever's being celebrated that month. So in March, for example, because it was Women's History Month, we read a book about women in the law. Last month, because April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we read the book Missoula, which of course is about sexual assault and rape in a college community, Missoula, Montana. And then this month, since May is Asian American Heritage Month, we are going to be reading a book on stereotypes and bias against Asian Americans from a legal perspective. So I'm looking forward to that discussion, and that discussion will happen at the end of the month. So we've been trying to think creatively about how we reach out to our alumni. All right, so what is the future of legal employment? And I apologize, I realize I'm talking a little bit longer than I had planned to, so I'm going to try to hurry up a little bit here so that we have time for questions. So one of the things is that we are shifting our on-campus interviewing to January 2021, and this is really to help our legal employers. Many of our alumni have let us know that given the uncertainties, if they had to do on-campus interviewing in late summer, early fall, that would be very difficult because they don't know what their needs are as a result of the economic challenges. So we're shifting that to January 2021. Obviously, many businesses are being hard hit by COVID-19, and this extends to law. So many companies which would regularly hire law firms are not able to do so and are putting legal work kind of on the back burner. Big law firms have imposed pay cuts and layoffs. Many of these big law firms have either canceled their summer associate programs, deferred new hiring, or perhaps are converting paid positions to unpaid positions. And that's why we're doing that alumni outreach in a week or so to hopefully find positions to assist our students. Litigation, which was safe in prior recessions, we're seeing a slowdown, I think for obvious reasons, right? The courts are doing in person and a lot of us are sheltering from home. Business deals are not necessarily happening. High tech and data privacy, we're starting to see a slowdown there. Intellectual property work has slowed down. And many of the lines of credit that businesses rely upon are likely to be pulled, which of course is going to have adverse impacts for firms. But all is not bleak. When we look at legal employment, there are some areas that we're seeing kind of an uptick and an interest as a result of COVID-19. So a big area is employment. For those of you who do employment law, you know that you have just been working 18-hour days because it's been so busy. Similarly for healthcare law, bankruptcy is very popular right now, and insurance coverage. And so we're pivoting and we're looking at these spaces. We are developing through our career development office various panels that will specifically focus on these topic areas, and in the hopes that we can prepare our students for these areas and position them in the best place possible to be able to get permanent jobs moving forward. Also, we're very hopeful that here in Utah, we won't be hit as hard as some of the legal communities, especially those on the coast that have been particularly hard hit by the COVID pandemic. So I am hopeful that we will be not necessarily safe in Utah, but we will be a little bit better off than some of our peers elsewhere. Also, we're seeing that government legal jobs are still stable. So the government is still hiring, there's still opportunities there. So thankfully, so far, we haven't seen a big drop off there. All right, so what about the future of legal education? So again, as I mentioned before, we're not going to make a decision on what the fall looks like until mid-June. We want to be sure that we get enough information to try to make as educated a decision as possible. Regardless of whether or not we are in person doing social distancing or not, there is going to be some sort of online component, again, because we have members of our community who are vulnerable until we have a vaccine. So thankfully, the actual technological transition to an online community went relatively smoothly. A lot of our challenges weren't necessarily on the technological side, they were more related to those professional and personal challenges that we were talking about. So what we're actively engaging right now is I'm meeting with all of our faculty who taught in the spring semester to get their feedback on what worked well, what didn't work well, and how can we fix where there are things that didn't work well, how can we try to fix that for the fall so that our students continue to have that really high class, high quality education that they've come to expect. So we're reflecting on the spring with an idea towards the fall of how we can improve things. But again, this is not all bad. As I mentioned before, legal education, we are a conservative bunch. We are slow to change. We are a profession steeped in transition. And so a lot of us hadn't done a lot of experimenting with online education. And so I think there's a lot of positive things that we can take from this grand experiment. So the new format really allows us to reach out to individuals and have access to individuals that we didn't previously have. So the webinars are a great example of that, where people are really able to participate when they can. And so I think we're likely to keep a webinar format for a lot of things moving forward because it allows for us to have that increased outreach. It also allows us to do really innovative things in the classroom. So I've had faculty share how they've been using some online quizzes to really help find out whether or not students comprehend material, to Amos Guerrera, who does this whole massive simulation on counterterrorism, and he moved it all online, and it was truly phenomenal what he was able to accomplish. And so I think we learned a lot from that experiment, and some of that might continue on moving forward. We're also now, because we've had a relatively positive experience with online education, we're looking at what it might mean to hire non-local faculty. So getting expertise in from around the country and taking advantage of that. We're also just getting more comfortable with online learning, and I think that's really going to help us as we pivot towards looking to an online Master's of Legal Studies in the future. We're also looking towards online, what we call micro-credentialing, this idea that maybe you don't want a master's, maybe you don't want a JD, but you might want to get some expertise in contracts. You could take a micro-credentialing class that might be online, learn what contract law is, learn the basics so that you can put on your resume that you have this micro-credentialing and contracts. And so that's something that we're really interested in exploring. So we're trying to see the silver lining in this crisis and to learn from it and to see if there aren't some elements of what we were forced to do in the spring that we may want to voluntarily continue to do well into the future. So that's just, again, apologies, I went a little bit longer than I had planned to, but happy to take any questions that you may have. Okay, so looking at the chat now. All right, so question 1, do you know approximately how many available positions there will be in the fall 21 incoming class in light of 2020 deferrals. So far, we saw a little bit of interest in deferrals at the very start of this crisis, but we haven't gotten much since then. So knock on wood, we have, oh, sorry, that just woke up my dog. So we have not seen a lot of deferrals so far. Now that doesn't mean that we won't see them in the future. We know that that's a possibility, especially as kind of this virus plays out and we see how bad it is and if people need to defer. But so far, we are not seeing a significant impact on the deferral. And so that means that our standard 90 to 100 slots should be available for fall 21. And we're not anticipating or seeing a big decrease yet. Second question is, what can alumni do to help the College of Law and its students address special issues or problems related to the COVID-19 pandemic? So the first is always, we very much appreciate those of you who can make a financial contribution. That helps us a lot. We have emergency funding. We have an emergency fund available to students so that where perhaps they can't pay their rent, or if they're food insecure, or maybe they're one of these students who lost their jobs and now they have to pay for summer tuition and they weren't planning on it. Anything that's COVID relating, they can apply for funding through this emergency fund. So for those of you who are able, contributions to that emergency fund are incredibly helpful and appreciated. If that's perhaps not a possibility at this time, another thing that's really helpful, as I mentioned before, in the next couple of days to a week or so, we should be sending out an email to alumni saying, if you have any work that potentially could be made available to one of our first or second year students, please let us know, because again, a lot of our first and second year students have lost their summer positions. And so we would very much appreciate any work that you might have available and we can match you with a student. The third way is for those of you who are able, we obviously have about 70 students who are looking for supervising attorneys to supervise them through this 360 hours under Diploma Privilege. So if you are willing and able to be a supervising attorney, we would very much appreciate your help. So those are just a couple of ways specifically related to COVID-19 that would be very helpful moving forward. And again, you have my email address on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me. You also have my cell phone number, and I can help you with all of those. Third question is, will the scholarship package for the early decision program for fall 2021 remain the same? Yes, at this time we do not anticipate changing our scholarships at all. In fact, we would like to continue to be able to offer more scholarships. That is a big goal of ours. We want to continue to decrease that debt load and make sure that we are both maintaining the top talent here in Utah and recruiting top talent to Utah. So we are doing everything possible to make sure that our scholarship budget is not negatively impacted by COVID-19. The fourth question is, so in an effort to provide more opportunities for students, as you say, are summer classes offered at a lower cost than full flat rate semester be offered at a per course price? So unfortunately, the answer to this is no. So we worked really closely with central administration, and a big thank you to the university for being such excellent partners to us in this space. Our tuition model is approved by the Board of Regents, and so being able to pivot and change our tuition model on such short notice was simply not possible in this environment. The way that we have plateau tuition, where students buy credits in blocks of 8. So we could not change that block format, and so students will still have to pay for a block of 8. Although it's interesting, if you look at our per credit price, the block of 8 credits, which is approximately $7,000, is actually the cost roughly of 6 credits. So even though we talk about it in terms of 8 credits, it's actually the cost is closer to 6 credits. We've also increased our summer offerings to assist students who who now find themselves in a position to be wanting to take summer classes. And additionally, those emergency funds that I mentioned, there is the possibility if a student can make a claim, so maybe initially the student was planning on having a paid summer job, but that summer job disappeared because of COVID-19. And so now they're wanting to take the summer classes. I think there's a really good argument to be made there that that is a COVID-19 related emergency fund. And so we have both the emergency funding that is available at the College of Law, and the university has emergency funding related to COVID-19 as well. So I sent out an email to students earlier this week encouraging students to make applications to those emergency funds where they're finding themselves in that position today, that in the hope that those funds can be helpful to students moving forward. Any other questions? Okay, well, I hear from our Alumni Association that that is all of our questions. I do want to say that we really, really, really value your feedback. As I mentioned before, part of our mission is not only to hopefully increase the value of your degrees and increase our national reputation, but we really view our commitment to community as being central to our identity. And again, that's why I'm so proud that we're named after S.J. Quinney, who really gave his all to build our community. And so we want to hear from you. If there are things we can be doing better in terms of outreach, or perhaps you have some suggestions on things that we might tweak, or if you want to tell us that we're doing a great job, we would love to hear from you. Please feel free to reach out to me via email. I also gave you my cell phone. Please feel free to use it. I love hearing from people. I love getting feedback. It's one of the best parts of this job. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today. Hopefully you can take away from this presentation, COVID-19 is a challenge, but I think we are doing the best we can to maintain our high quality and world-class reputation throughout this challenge. And I'm really hopeful that we'll actually be able to use what we've learned through this challenge to become even better, and to become more nimble, and to hopefully get some great ideas moving forward. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. Again, if there's anything I can do to support you or any questions you have, please let me know, and thank you so much.